Welcome to Crest. I'm Tom Anderson, and as we approach the back end of September, our episodes are about to come thick and fast as we prepare to wrap up Season 1 for 2020. We're coming back in 2021, and to that end, our Instagram will soon have a link to a survey monkey which we're asking listeners to fill out so that we can act on feedback and ideas, and therein take the show from strength to strength during the off-season. If you don't have Instagram, then you can still do the survey by simply emailing castcrest@gmail.com with just one word in the title of the email, survey. No need to punctuate or add conversational pleasantries. We'll reply with the link when it's ready. Besides having your say on the shape Crest takes into next year, another reason to do the survey is that the kind folk at the surf hardware company Obsessive Disorder have put up some prizes. So if you leave your email, you'll be entered into the draw. Your data will be safely used in line with all legal red tape too, we promise. This week, we're releasing shows on both Monday and Thursday. This will allow us to align with October the 1st, which is a historic day in Welsh surf history, and the opportunity to release the first part of a certain Icons interview on that date is an opportunity not to be missed. It's the worst kept secret by now that Rhino and I might have spoken to Jones Sr. as well during our recent visits to Llangennydd, and that will make up our season finale in 2 episodes' time. Before that, I've just spoken to 2 wonderful people in Chris Nelson and Demi Taylor, and do they have some tales from a decade of hosting one of the world's foremost surf film festivals? Of course they do. Enjoy. On the show, I'm speaking to the couple who founded and run the Approach Inlines and London Surf Film Festivals. From putting on Steph Gilmore's premiere in the Big Smoke to helping upcoming and aspiring film directors break through, their events have often become crucial stops along any World Surfer's European leg. Listen as they recall some of the personalities and situations the festivals have presented, as well as the movies which have made it. International purveyors of the finest surf stoke. After jacking in the day jobs to become nomadic writers, Chris Nelson and Demi Taylor's footprint guides to surfing in Britain and Europe dropped at a time when publishers were eating up anything surf. Building on Demi's experiences from her days in the Roxy PR department, the couple then hit on a winning formula in running the inaugural London Surf Film Festival. In the decade since, Chris and Demi's events experiences have seen them also develop the Approach Inlines Festival in Newquay and a raft of specialty surf contests, and in the process it has been their job to hang out with some of the most interesting and high-profile characters in the surf world. In the water, they're both known for supremely stylish approaches to wave riding as well, on an incredible range of craft, always thinking outside the box. I could quiz them all day about the various items they've ridden in their time, and the exotic waves they've done it on. I'll be trying to cover it all in the coming hour. Here they are, it's Chris and Demi. Welcome to Crest, guys.
Hey!
Hi Tom, thanks for having us.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure, guys. How's it looking down there in Cornwall today? It's windy here, but we've got a big swell on the way.
Yeah, I think same. Like, I think we've got 50-mile-an-hour winds coming. But it's weirdly warm out there. It almost feels like we could have a hurricane.
Yeah, nice.
Wrong continent, I know.
Yeah. And have you got places to surf for if it gets really big and blustery, or have you got to get sort of down onto the south coast if that happens?
There are places, but it's our busiest time of year, so we probably won't be heading there at the moment because it's full A of surfers and B of people on foam bodyboards.
Hey, but also like really bad sewage at the moment as well, because obviously heavy rain, busy season, really great time for the sewage to all spill out.
Yeah.
Oh. Hey, I've got to go to Sidmouth tomorrow for 2 days, and that place was in the news for sewage, wasn't it? It was the place that had that fat bird growing underneath it.
Yeah.
Nice.
And in fact, I haven't thought about that. I might be there while the storm comes through. So I don't know. I don't know if you can surf there or not. Maybe I should shove a board in the car.
Anyway, let's talk about your
a brown board.
Yeah.
so we can fit in. Yeah, well, we need those round here anyway, where we live. The water's brown all the time. Makes the tube nice and dark though when they come along. So let's talk about the festivals that you guys run and how all of that got started, because I remember the first time I saw that there was a London surf film festival happening. I suppose I was overcome by that kind of like the coast dwellers sort of prejudice against the London surfer, like, what, London surf scene? And then when I went there, the London surf scene was amazing and like really sort of fabulous and happening, and you guys were sort of the conductors to the whole piece. So how did that come about, having a surf film festival, in London?
Well, I was writing a book about cold water surfers, and I met a guy in New York called Tyler Brewer, and Tyler founded the New York Surf Film Festival, and we were chatting about the New York Surf Film Festival and how it came about. And basically Tyler was going, because Tyler's brother lives in the UK, so he knew what a vibrant scene we had here, and he said, how come you don't have a festival like that in the UK? And it kind of made us, we were sitting around the kitchen table one day going, how come we don't have a festival like that in the UK? How come no one's done that? And we basically, we were chatting, weren't we? And we went, well, why don't we do it?
Yeah. And I think it was that culmination as well of sort of realising what a vibrant, creative scene you're part of, and the fact that there wasn't really an outlet for it. And I know a lot of people have gone, why did you take it to London? And sort of quite simply, so I'm from the southwest and Chris is from the northeast. So
it's halfway.
We wrestled a bit, and then we thought, well, actually, why not London? Why not take it somewhere where you have great international transport links, where you're taking it out of a community, so it's actually open to everybody. It's not that it's, a Cornwall Surf Film Festival, so the mighty Welsh community wouldn't feel part of it. We wanted it to be open to everyone and accessible to everyone. So strangely, it made us go, let's take it to the city.
And that was one of the big challenges of the very first one that we did, because I think people thought with it being based in London, it was going to be, kooks, and it was going to be like black London taxis with surfboards on the roof and, showing...
The Endless Summer on repeat, which is a great film, but isn't necessarily reflective of like our time and place.
Yeah.
So curating the first festival and getting the tone right for the first festival was really important, because it was a core festival for core surfers, and I think people in London responded to that.
Yeah.
And of course you could pull in proper stars by doing it in London as well, because you guys have had some incredible figures from the world of surfing come to London Surf Film Festival, and that it's your job to look after them for a couple of days and entertain them and sort of show them around. That must be amazing. Who sort of has stood out to you? I mean, I remember Stephanie Gilmore going there, and it was like, I don't think there's anyone in the world that would make me more starstruck. I did get starstruck when I met the astronaut Chris Hadfield. Literally couldn't talk. But generally when you meet surfers, you think, oh, you might be a good surfer. But she was there in London, and sort of, who stood out? Stephanie Gilmore, I imagine, and who else?
Yeah, I think for me, she really stood out, but also because she came, not just her, but she brought Laura Enover with her and her sister, who's her manager and agent, Whitney, and then she brought the director, Ava, and then we had the editor, Isabel. So we had this massive tribe of super inspiring surf women, and you had Stephanie in the centre of it, just shining like this beacon. And it's that thing that they say, isn't it, that you should never meet your heroes because they're never going to live up to it. But she absolutely lived up to it and beyond. I've never seen anyone take so much time with every single person they meet to, I don't know, she must have had her photo taken with 400 people.
Yeah.
I mean, and there was no stress, there was no flap. She was who she seems to be. Yeah.
She did about 3 hours of selfies after the screening. I mean, there were like 500 people there, and she must have had her photo taken with every single one.
Totally.
And also, her movie that she was showing was such a frank and honest insight into what makes her tick. And often you think that some of these ultra competitive people, they have to sort of have that kind of protective shell around themselves. You know, I find Carissa Moore is brilliant at just giving an interview where she just says, I'm really stoked and everything's really lovely. And then I wonder how somebody makes that decision to sort of, you know, show right inside them. You know, she talked about being attacked and all of that. And then she sits there in the cinema next to everyone, watching everyone watch those stories unfolding. Amazing.
And actually,
who else is... Sorry, go on, Demi.
And in that Q&A afterwards, she was really frank and open, because it was at quite a challenging time in the surf industry. It's when, do you remember that contentious advert came out?
With her allegedly in it, although I think it was actually a body double, wasn't it?
I can neither confirm nor deny. You know, and it opened up this big conversation about how women are portrayed in surfing. So I think that was really interesting. And she was quite put on the spot, but she rose to the challenge. She answered it brilliantly, and she kind of shut down any detractors. And that was, I think it was really inspiring, really motivating for everyone in the audience, not just women, but absolutely everyone. She just took everyone on that journey. So yeah, she really is a beacon.
And just for the listeners' benefit, there we're talking about the Roxy advert, aren't we? For the Roxy Pro that ran alongside the Quicksilver Pro in France, and the French advert showed the men's contest advert showed people getting barreled, and the Roxy Pro advert was sort of basically a modelling advert, wasn't it? And then a couple of major figures in the surf industry actually then lost their jobs for sort of, you know, ill-conceived social media comments in response to that. And it did give the industry a real big shake-up. And I think one wonders whether we'd be in the situation where, you know, the women are looking at potentially having a Pipe Masters, and, you know, where the women got the Trestles contest alongside it. And, you know, if that... It had to happen at some point, didn't it? And I don't think Stephanie necessarily chose to be at the centre of that, but she was flung into it, wasn't she?
Yeah, yeah, because I think she's always had that balance, and I think it's what she said, you know. She enjoys surfing in a bikini. She enjoys being a woman. That is part of who she is. But she's also a really great surfer. You can be both.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that I really like about the festival is it gives the audience a chance to meet the people who make the films and star in the films, and we do Q&As that are open to the audience, and they get to ask them questions, and they don't shy away from asking them questions, you know. I mean, because doing a lot of the Q&As on the stage, you know, I tee them up, but then the audience asks some really penetrating questions. And I think that's one thing about UK audiences is they're not just going to serve up fluff questions. They want to know the nitty-gritty, and they want to get into the details with these people.
Yeah.
Who else has stood out that you've hosted at London Surf Film Festival then?
Rob Machado.
I mean, Rob Machado, amazing.
Yeah.
Like a total legend. Just everything you expect. Like, he is the person you expect him to be. He just takes time to talk to you. He will open up about all the amazing experiences he's had in his life. Just someone who's been there at some of the most critical moments in surf history. You know, the Kelly Slater high five. You know, being able to ask him about the high five. You know, like that. Yeah. You know, a lot of people think decided that the world title that year, and being able to ask him about ultimately his journey to become one of the first free surfers. You know, someone who changed the course of surf history, really, as a free surfing professional, you know, to step away from competitions. Yeah.
And within the festival itself, sorry, Demi, were you going to say something?
Oh no, I was just, you know, when you're just in that wonderful little reminiscent bubble, and you're like, yes, he is a total legend. He's everything you hoped he'd be.
Yeah.
And what about sort of favourite moments that have happened with, you know, you must have got experienced some interesting situations there.
Like going out clubbing with Albilea and everyone after their film was.
Oh yeah, and I have to say actually, Albie and his crew, Albie and Tori Meister
On the dance floor, yeah.
I mean, they don't just have big wave moves. They've got small floor moves.
And little wave moves, because Albilea won the Surf Snowdonia invitation up in North Wales, didn't he? The first ever contest
of course he did.
in a wave garden.
What else? We lost Keparasira when we did the Approaching Lines Festival in Newquay. We lost Keparasira about 2 a.m, didn't we?
I think he got stolen.
He got stolen
by some fans.
Our one job, look after Kepa.
Because he had to...
He's a lovely character, isn't he?
Oh,
Yeah.
he's so good. But it's not just like... So you obviously have like those amazing big name people who come that everyone, immediately knows they want to meet. Like, whether it's someone like a big wave star, like we said, like Albie or Paige Arms, who kind of like really sort of shone a light on the women's big wave world. Like Keith Malloy, he came in our first year. He was...
Wow.
He was like a man mountain, and also just had this sort of rich vein of stories to tap. So we've had really big iconic people, and like Kai Neville's been to the festival. He came and presented one
that
of
was
his...
Approaching Lines Newquay, wasn't it? He came
Exactly.
to that,
I think you actually did that Q&A, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it was interesting. With Brendan Gibbons, he was, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I asked him about the clothes he was wearing. I pointed to the I think it didn't go down that well. I pointed at the crowd, and they were all sort of dressed in all the same outfits as all the Kai Neville surfers. And I said, "Look, what have you done, Kai, to the fashion industry?" And not one person in the audience laughed.
It was tight trousers and white socks.
It was everyone, yeah. Yeah. Really interesting, though, the way he shook up the sort of formula for surf movies as well, didn't he? Because he sort of came along as like basically his thing is he just doesn't care about what's gone before. No sense of being tied to traditions of genre or what expectations are, and also the same with the sort of surfing that his athletes do, isn't it?
Yeah, and I that's one of the things about the festival is you really see how a filmmaker will come along and have a vision, and then how that resonates through the following years, and people go, they take that inspiration and run with it.
Yeah, I think someone like Joe G's also had a massive influence on people. And he's often referenced as, when people are talking about where their inspiration comes from, his name comes up time and time again. But I think with Kai, it's interesting because hadn't he come up through Taylor Steele?
Yeah.
And actually, although
I think he interned for him or something, didn't he? At the start, yeah.
You can kind of see that sort of influence in his work, I think. But it's more that the surfers that he works with are very true to like his time and place in surf history. Like it feels very current, very now. Like I think he was the first person where we all went, oh, actually, when it's choppy and shitty, that's the time to go out and bust airs and do something different. Yeah. It's like surfing isn't just about perfect waves in Indonesia. It can look like anything. And I think he really helped people remember that.
Yeah, because when you actually look at the waves in those films, like you'll have Chipper Wilson or Dion Aegis, and they're out in absolute hideous onshore slop, but they're just busting these massive airs.
Yeah.
And the fact that he shoots them in that cinematic way, you almost don't notice how bad the surf is.
No.
Yeah. Under the sort of sand, I remember one section of Dion Aegis, so you can't even see the bottom of the wave. So the bottom turn, the most fundamental part of good surfing, is just hidden.
Yeah, exactly. He's like that. Nah, you don't need to see that.
Yeah. It's what's going on above the wave that matters.
Exactly. And I love that. I love the way filmmakers help you change your perspective about what you're doing and what you're seeing.
Yeah. And you've done everyone a service this spring by the Lockdown Surf Film Fest. And that turned out to be massive. Where did that idea come from? That must have been a mission to organise.
It's funny. It's like looking back on it, it was quite an emotional response to that really specific time. And it was sort of early March, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we were looking at, like, on Instagram. It was before we went into lockdown, but the Spanish were already in lockdown, and we were seeing our friends, like Kepa Acero was posting, you know, little videos of him at his window peering out and going, oh, you know, we can't go outside. And we were like, wow, can you imagine being in that position? And we knew it was coming our way, and we were like, what are we going to do? Like, what's our response going to be?
We sort of went, how do we bring everyone together and make everyone feel like, yes, this is hideous, but the community's still here. We can still get together. We can still enjoy the things we enjoy. We can still talk to one another. There can still be that dialogue. And we went, oh, how can we do that? Oh, I know. So we kind of reached out. We kind of put together a list of, like, some of our favourite films that we've shown at the festival. Some of our, you know, favourite and closest filmmakers that we've worked with. And then we just sort of set out to contact them to say, would you like to share your film with the surf community? And overwhelmingly, everyone just said yes immediately. They went, yeah, of course. Because I think, again, like I said, it was such an emotional time. It was such an emotional response that, yeah, I think everyone just went, yes, we need to feel connected.
And that was one of the amazing things about it, was that people came together as a global community. So we were like, well, let's contact, you know, filmmakers. We were like, it's not just a British thing. It's not just a European thing that we're going through. It's people in America. It's people in South America. It's people in Japan. So the idea was to have a weekly screening where everybody could sit down together and watch a surf film. Have it available for 24 hours so it can go around the world, and then do a Q&A with the filmmaker and chat to them about how they're getting through lockdown and how the film came about. And yeah, we basically went, let's bring in as many people as possible to be a part of this. So, like, we would do some of the Q&As, wouldn't we? But we would also bring in other people. So, like David Lee Scales in America and Tyler Brewer. We got Sancho, who founded, you know, Surf Film Festival. He did a Q&A with the Gauchos del Mar guys about their film in Spanish, you know, so that people who didn't speak English could be a part of the festival. So yeah, the idea was just to bring as many people together. Like Nathan Myers did an interview with one of the filmmakers. Who did he do?
Oh, God. Do you know what? It was so wonderful. We had so many people just pulling together.
Yeah. So Nathan from Surfers Journal did one of the interviews. So yeah, we just reached out and we were amazed by, I mean, literally everybody said yes, you know, and I think it's because they could relate to, you know, we're all surfers, we're all in this together. How do we pull together as a community? Yeah.
And was it all day, every day for you guys then, organising that?
I'm going to say it was perhaps more work than we had anticipated at the time. But you know what? I actually think that was a good thing, because it was such a strange time. And we actually weren't surfing. Like, we kind of just went, I think everyone made their own decision, didn't they, about how they were going to react to the lockdown that happened. And it just wasn't right for us. So actually having a different focus for surfing was really helpful. And yeah, I think having that interconnected feeling. But yes, it was quite a lot of work, but...
And it was also nice to reconnect with films that we'd screened previously at the festival, because, you know, obviously you do these films and you put them out there and you do interviews with the filmmakers and you try and get the films as much exposure as possible. And then they're there in the back of your minds, and then you revisit them and you go, actually, that was an amazing film. And then to go back and touch in with the filmmakers or the stars and find out how their lives have, you know, progressed since then was actually really great.
Yeah, and getting to sort of trail their, you know, their new projects, or So while we were saying, yes, please can you share with us these projects that we've previously screened, the idea was that you could watch that for free, but then perhaps you'd go and sort of support that filmmaker if you really enjoyed their film by going and watching one of their more recent films and paying for that privilege. So then you're like paying into the cup and helping support independent filmmaking.
And that's a really good point you make there, because in that kind of festival setting, often a big moment happens, like the screening of Stephanie in the Water, and then you're doing the Q&A, and then you're looking after people, and then you're in a club, and then the next day there's another movie, and actually being able to savour what the movie was about and then the response to it, you can't do. So I suppose that idea of revisiting something for a second time puts you more in the moment than perhaps you are. Well, or is it more in the moment or less in the moment? I don't know.
I think it also
it's a good thing anyway.
People put these films out, and people, as an audience, you get to be a part of their lives. But then people's lives move on and things happen. Like, so, obviously Albie had that horrendous injury, at Jaws. So being able to catch up with Albie and find out about how he's doing now, how that changed his life. Mikey DeTemple, we showed his film, but then obviously Mikey had the heart operation, which has obviously been a bit, affected his life. So just being able to touch in and almost, bring people's stories up to date and find out how their lives have changed since they screened at the festival was really interesting.
Yeah, totally.
And you'd finished the editing work on the project that you're doing. Let's talk about that now with Leanne Curran, CJ Mirror and Chris Mclean, Translate, or was that still going on simultaneous to that, Demi? So this is a project. Yeah, tell us about that project and where that's at and what it is exactly.
So Translate is the latest project, which is a collaboration between Chris Mclean, who's an award-winning filmmaker. We've screened countless of his films. He's a British filmmaker. His first film was Uncommon Ideals, that won the very first Shorties, which is the short film strand at the London Surf Film Festival. And so Translate is the latest collaboration between himself and composer CJ Mirror, who has actually scored all of Chris's films since the very beginning. So they have this almost 10-year relationship. And Translate, we premiered it at the London Surf Film Festival last year. And it was a live audio-visual performance. So the idea was that Chris had filmed across Europe for about 6 years. It's like an ode to the North Atlantic. And he'd created this beautiful sort of visual poem. And then he had passed this film over to CJ to score. And some of the film had only just like almost days before the screening, had only just been locked in. So right. CJ was having to compose like at the very last minute for this live performance. So a live audio-visual performance, you've got this beautiful film on screen, you've got CJ playing a synthesizer, electric guitar, Leanne Curran is part of the band, she's composing as well. You've got strings, you've got CJ at one point bowing a clothes horse, which blew everyone's mind. I'm not going to go into more detail than that on the clothes horse. So I've actually been working with them to help them take Translate to a global audience. But obviously coronavirus had other ideas.
I mean, it was unfortunate, wasn't it, the timing? Yeah. Because the whole idea, I think Chris, coming from a filmmaker background, was that he enjoyed the engagement with the audience. It was almost, I think for a filmmaker, you have a different experience for, like, so CJ Mirror, he's used to performing in front of an audience and getting that kind of engagement and feedback. Whereas I think when Chris did it the first time, he could like tap into that energy. And the first time he did it, there was almost an element of visual mixing going on as well, wasn't there? So the idea with this project was to take it around the world, to different festivals and different performances, but obviously the timing was a little bit unfortunate. And Demi was acting as a producer, weren't you, for the project?
Yeah. So now, as opposed to taking the live AV around the world, Chris is actually going to be releasing the film, we hope, at the end of the year. And John Sampson, who is CJ Mirror, is actually releasing the soundtrack to translate at the end of the year as well. So his first single is, it dropped actually in August, and I think his second major release with Liane Curran Sans Raison has just dropped actually as well.
Oh, great. Well, we'll share that information so that our listeners can pick those up.
I would say that I think Chris Mclean is one of the kind of reasons that we did the festival, because when you look back kind of 10 years ago, I think our ideals in starting the festival was to give a platform to up-and-coming British surf filmmakers, because we kind of looked around the world and we went, well, the British surf filmmakers that are coming through are as good as anywhere in the world. You know, the content they're producing. So our idea with the festival was to give them a platform on the global stage. And I think Chris is a great example of someone who has come through and has inspired. I mean, you see films coming out of, you know, countries around the world that are clearly inspired by, you know, Chris's style. And I think he's just one of the, you know, many success stories that have come through the festival. You know, I think our idea was to give them a platform, and it's great to see them go onto a global stage and promote, you know, UK surfing and UK and Irish surfing to a global audience. Absolutely,
because I think the surf culture that we have in the UK and our experience of surfing is so very different to, for example, the Californian or the Australian experience. And I think people don't necessarily have the confidence to, celebrate their own culture. So almost doing the festival gives people a platform to do so.
We should introduce like a kind of a surfing version of Godwin's law when talking about surf movies, that the longer a couple of people talk about surf movies, the probability of somebody mentioning Endless Summer approaches. Because that project is actually, whilst being excitingly sort of avant-garde in the way that it's changing the idea of how surf movies and sort of surf events or you know, surf celebration events come together, sits really nicely in that kind of really original tradition of surf movie making, in the sense that you know, the Sandals recorded a kind of a single one take soundtrack across Endless Summer, and that Bruce Brown would then take the shows around and stand there with a mic at the side of the stage, sort of, you know, doing those kind of witty narrations over the top of it, and that the showing of a movie is a collective event, like an arts event that you can go to, and I suppose that's interesting, because, you know, so much of surf movie consumption in probably the 80s and the 90s was done off a VHS, a Black Diamond VHS, and sort of, you know, quickly watch a session before you went in the sea to amp up. And now there's a real appetite for getting together to watch surf movies again, isn't there? And even through the lockdown, then, you guys have facilitated that with, you know, because people felt like they were sort of part of something when you knew you were watching one of those movies at the same time as so many other people. It like all great projects, it's sort of got that kind of awareness of the traditions that have come before it, but complete innovation on sort of where to go next.
Yeah, I think definitely. And I think the nice crossover there is that there's always that element of risk, isn't there? It almost captures that sort of ephemeral nature of surfing in itself, where you go, every wave is different. So if you
might
have
score, you might not, yeah.
Yeah, and you have that, when you have a live element within a surf movie, whether that's a narrator or a live event or live music, you're bringing in that sense of, actually, this is real, this is live, this is occurring. It has that same, ephemeral nature, I think. Which is why it's so lovely. Like, there will be no two times the same as in surfing. Even if you're narrating and you're reading from a script, your cadence is going to be different.
Absolutely. Can I ask, actually, then, you mentioned the word script. Can I ask about your writing work? Because that was, I suppose, when the London Surf Film Festival idea occurred to you, you already had a kind of a skill set that you'd both acquired from the books that you put together. Because you guys are behind the Footprint guides, Surfing in Europe and Surfing in Britain, and then Chris's later Footprint book as well. How did that come about in the first place? Europe was the first one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we kind of came to a crossroads in our careers in that. So Demi was doing the PR and marketing for Quicksilver in the UK, working with Phil Jarrett, an absolute legend who was
one of the surf writers of our age, yeah.
Yeah, and Jeff Hackman, and leading this amazing life. I was editing a surf magazine, a surf skate snowboard magazine based in the north of England, and we met through I was going to Quicksilver events and met Demi there, and I think after a year of being together, we basically went, let's just pack our jobs in and go on the road.
Run off into the sunset together.
Yeah. And we bought a Winnebago and packed our jobs in and went off and spent a year on the road, basically travelling around Europe with this notion that we were going to write this book. 100% confident in our mind that we were going to come back and write this book and that people would want to buy it.
And you were correct.
Well, and we'd go around. We went from the Orkney Isles to the south of Morocco, and every time we met people, they'd go, "Hey, so what are you guys doing?" And we were like, "Oh yeah, we're writing a book." And they'd go, "Yeah, okay, right."
I mean, we didn't have a publisher. We just we quit our jobs with quite a firm idea in mind about what we wanted to do. We want to do a book which helps you maximise your water time. So it's part travel guide, part surf guide, part stories, part ideas for what to do when it's flat, because inevitably it will be. But that's all we had, was a firm idea and quite a strong and naive belief in the fact that we would simply get a book published if we wanted to write it. And I mean, you're a writer, Tom. You know that it doesn't necessarily work like that.
Well, do you know what? I can tell you a story. I don't know if you know this story about luck as a writer. When I had my first big meeting where it looked like there was a chance that the first book I wrote, Riding the Magic Carpet, was actually going to get bought by this publisher, I was invited to Chelsea Arts Club for lunch, and we were going to meet this with the agent that had sort of picked my book up and was willing to take a punt on it, and we were going to meet with the editor of Summersdale, and they were going to show up, and they'd been reading it, and we were basically going to find out whether they were interested in seeing more or not, or even if they'd do a deal. And somebody phoned me, a friend of mine, the day before, and said, "Hey, there's a photo of you in a book." And I said, "Right, okay, where?" And they said, "It's the Footprint Guide to Surfing in Britain." And it was in the Outer Hebrides, a nice in-the-water tube shot by Mark Lumsden, who sadly passed away recently, so rest in peace, Mark. And I went into Waterstones and I bought it, and I took it with me, and then the agent went, "Oh, we'll make this work. Right, here we go." And then the Summersdale woman turned up and sat down, and the agent said, "Right, well, as you can see, surfing is the hot thing at the moment to be publishing books about. Look at this. This is in the front window of Waterstones on the King's Road at the moment. And if we flick to this page, you'll see a photograph of Tom," she goes. And the publisher went, "Oh, wow. And I was sort of sitting there with my leg actually in a plaster cast at the time, trying my best to look like a surfer. And I think I'd been to the FA Cup final the day before, and it was only on a whim that I didn't wear my Arsenal shirt to the meeting. And it was about 2 minutes later that the publisher ended up sort of committing and going, "Right, well, we love it, we'll do it." And so for all I know, you guys' editorial decision that you made there to include that picture of me instead of the 20,000 other ones of the Australian Jason Duffy getting even more barreled at the same wave, that might have been the difference. So, there's karma in this world, isn't there?
Oh, I had no idea. That's so lovely.
Do we get a cut
That's not a bad idea. Yeah, we'll organise. We'll see if we can get them to buy us lunch in the Chelsea Arts Club to discuss it, shall we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be nice. It's funny though, isn't it? Because there was that weird little magic window when surfing was really hot, and like surf books. I mean, it's weird now because obviously publishing is in quite dire straits. But there was that magic window in that period where surf books were selling really well. There was a real appetite for surf publishing, and I remember one day, like you do when you have a book, you go on and you check how it's doing, and we were in the top 20 selling books on Amazon. You know, it was like this amazing window, wasn't there, where you would just people would be, there was a real consumption going on. There was a real, people loved reading about surfing, and maybe to do with like nowadays with the internet and the immediacy of, you know, word and people can consume on a daily basis. But they did used to be like people would go in and buy a book and read a book, and you know, that kind of need for surf culture.
And then on the back of the 2 footprint guides, you did Cold Water Souls, Chris, which was sort of there was a lot of pictures in the book. It's not quite a coffee table, is it? Because it was sort of half paperback, half coffee table book, and it was basically an homage to enjoying the cold.
Yeah, it kind of fell between the two, didn't it? I mean, what I did was I went on like a 3-year mission. Sounds a bit Star Trek-y, but what happened was I got sent to Vancouver Island to write an article for the very first issue of Hook magazine, and it was about the cold water surf community there. And it was at a time when people, I mean, as British surfers, we know all about surfing in the cold, but I think the wider public didn't really know about this, and they didn't know that there were surfers in places like Canada. And so I went to Vancouver Island, and I wrote about the community, and I did something for, I think it was the Independent newspaper, and people were like, oh wow, we never knew this existed. But while I was there, I met a guy, and he was one of the pioneers of surfing on Vancouver Island, and I felt that there were a lot of similarities between this guy's story and the story of where I started surfing in the Northeast. I could see the kind of the commonality, and the history seemed to be very similar, and I thought, I bet there are communities like this all around the world that people don't really know about, but share this common bond of, you know, surfing in wetsuits, like having to find surfboards when there are no surf shops. And so I spent basically 3 years going around the world and finding these people, and it was a little bit like a detective story, you know. So I went to Nova Scotia. Obviously, I'd done a lot of trips to the north of Scotland, but I went to Iceland, Hokkaido in Japan, and the people that I met there, you know, their stories were very different, but also had a lot of common bonds. But the thing I liked about it was, like I said, it was a bit of a detective story in that finding the pioneers, like finding the very first person who surfed on Hokkaido, you know, that was the thing that I found really interesting. And meeting someone who'd go, well, my friend surfed before me, maybe you should talk to him. And then they'd introduce you, and then they'd introduce you to someone else, and then finally you'd find like the very first surfer. And they would go, yeah, no one's ever asked me about it before.
And then you knew you'd got there. How was the surf on Hokkaido?
The surf on Hokkaido is amazing. I mean, it's primarily known as like a snow sport destination.
Yeah, it's the place for powder in the world, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know, like it sounds ridiculous, but you know, you're used to seeing these images of like 4x4s with trailers and jet skis on the back. But in Hokkaido, they have a similar thing, but under the cover, rather than a jet ski, they have like a skidoo. And they'll skidoo into these surf breaks because, you know, they get 15 feet of powder every winter.
Yeah.
And I think what was interesting about Cold Water Souls was that yes, some of these destinations, you know, you had read about them in magazines, but what was interesting is that they always focused on the surfers they took with them to go and surf in these places, as opposed to looking at actually the communities that already exist there. So I think for me, that's what I really enjoyed about Coldwater Souls, is that it was actually talking about the people who'd begun surfing there in spite of the challenges and almost had overlooked those challenges, had just accepted them as part of their natural existence.
We spoke to Sam Bleakley a couple of weeks ago on Crest, and Sam was telling us that he feels that the real sort of essence of travel writing is interacting with those communities. And he made a very similar point to you, actually, Demi, that this idea that, you know, a lot of the traditional surf trip, you're exactly right, is, you know, we go, we conquer, you know, we write up, we plug the surfers who've got the stickers on the end of their boards that have come on our trip. And that was kind of what Sam said he thought was the essence of good travel writing, is when it's about, you know, you travel to a place and learn the condition of its people. So it's interesting to hear you then making the same point. In fact, maybe we'll talk about travel at this point, because I wanted to ask you guys about two things, and I suppose they kind of come together. It's through you guys actually that I own a single fin, because I'd always kind of written off single finning as an idea, and then a conversation with you guys completely convinced me to get a single fin, and I now realise that they're a wonderful thing. And I remember in this conversation you were talking about how you were going to Indo with a quiver of single fins.
Yeah.
And that you were going to surf, you know, the waves of Indonesia, and you know, with that quiver. And I remember, so perhaps can you tell us a bit about your both of you have a love of Indonesia, and the wave crafts that you use there.
Yeah, I mean,
That would have been, I wonder if that would have been the trip to Java.
It was Java, yeah. You don't need to necessarily name anywhere more specific if you don't want to. Yeah, it was Java.
Yeah. So interestingly, I think on that trip, I think you had a single fin. I think I had my quad, but I think I ended up riding my surf mat as well.
Yeah. I mean, it was funny because the place that we were staying at, because we've always had a love of riding like all kinds of crafts. And Demi was unloading her board bag, and I think there was an Aussie there, and he went, "Oh, mate, you got a surf mat?" And then he pulled out his surf mat.
Yeah.
And then there was another couple staying, and they brought their surf mats as well. So in this random corner of Java, suddenly the lineup was filled with surf mats.
I think there were 3 of us out one day, and we were all riding over each other on these mats, and people were just looking at us like, what are they doing with
Like the
those rubbish
locals.
bags?
Yeah, the locals were going, what even is this?
Yeah. But, you know, I'd say they're a great thing to have in your quiver. They're really light. They roll up. You know, the airlines aren't going to ding them. Yeah, I think it's just about being a little bit adaptable.
Yeah. And I think we, I don't know where we got our love of alternative craft from. It could be from Trickster, I suppose.
Yeah.
Like our third wheel at the festival, Nick Holden.
There's this Trickster Nick.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
So Nick for years ran the World Bellyboard contest at our local beach, Chapelporth, which is basically riding wooden bellyboards from the 1920s, which got to a point where it was attracting 400 or 500 people,
Yeah.
like every year. And he's a lover of alternative craft.
And then the 3 of us, we used to do the Slider Cup, which is the fins-free Friction Affliction Society, which was surf mats, bellyboards, hand planes, and pipos. And then we did the 5-to-1 fin fair,
Yeah.
which was a surf event which basically involved everything from a 5-fin bonza down to a single fin. So I guess what we're saying is we've always liked looking at what else is out there in terms of riding waves, like not having fixed opinions about what type of boards go well or what type of craft go well. And actually, it's funny because I've just been talking to Nick because I think they're going to be running the single fin shootout this coming October. A bit gangster, so I don't know if I should have mentioned it, but it's out there now.
I believe that you came and represented the mighty Wales at the Approaching Lines International Festival of Surf.
I did, on a single fin. It was a single fin invitational, yeah, and I really enjoyed it because the surf was pumping, and I went in order to respect the equipment requirements. Went surfing in pumping waves on a single fin, and the epiphany was complete. Because before that I'd thought, yeah, okay, I'm going to play around with a single fin then, but I sort of kept a surf that wasn't necessarily ideal. And I suppose that was where you guys were telling me about using them in Indo that really kind of opened my eyes. Is Indonesia the place outside of Cornwall then that really captures your hearts as a travel destination?
I guess it's been a bit of a revelation, hasn't it? Because I think for years, because coming from the northeast, I was always drawn to your Scotlands and Islands and the colder places. So, like, if we had a trip, we'd go maybe to Norway, wouldn't we? And surf these points in the middle of nowhere with like 4 locals and pumping surf. And then my sister moved to Kuala Lumpur about 10 years ago, 8 years ago.
Yeah, and since then it's been a really great combination of family and fun.
It's such a great jumping off point. Once you get to KL, you can hop on a flight. Anywhere, it's opened up Indo for us, and we've just, the whole surfing in shorts and has been a revelation. And
in fact, we had a friend who moved to Bali just at the very start of lockdown, and she's been saying to us, "Oh, got a spare room." So as and when travel opens up, although I don't know, actually, I feel a bit like at the moment I'm probably looking closer to home.
Although not last Christmas, was it January? The January before, we went to the North Shore of Hawaii for the first time, which was a revelation. Having never considered going there, just going to the mecca of surfing, it was just an absolutely awesome experience. Yeah,
it was definitely a highlight getting to body surf at Waimea.
I was about to ask you if you had the surf mat in your quiver, Demi.
I had to buy swim fins on the North Shore, so that was like my little thing I brought home with me. But also I realised that body surfing on the North Shore in a swimsuit is not ideal. So that was a good life lesson there. You want something quite tight fitting, I'd say. To avoid awkward moments.
Yeah. But an awesome experience. Like, for years I'd always gone, you know what? You interview people about the North Shore, and basically you hear what is like a horror highlights reel of, I nearly drowned, I nearly got killed by the locals, like just horror stories. But to actually go there and experience it, there's nothing like standing on the beach and watching Third Reef pipeline breaking, and seeing these like humongous waves and feeling the beach shake. It was,
and getting sweaty palms, even though that you have no intention of going in at Pipe, but just getting sweaty palms just standing on the beach there watching it. It's just that was quite something. And it was nice because we were there for work, so we got to kind of experience the North Shore through those sort of eyes, sort of being taken around the North Shore.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what you're doing at the moment then. So you've both been working on documentaries now yourselves, and you've been involved in The Ripple Effect. Was it Tim Baker who wrote the earlier of The Ripple Effect?
So Tim did season 1.
Yeah.
And it was directed by Peter Hamblin.
Right.
And we knew Pete through the festival. And I think Tim was unable to do season 2, so we were chatting with Pete, and Pete said, "Hey, you guys are writers. Do you fancy doing the script for season 2? And we went, yeah, sure. And then he went, okay, so on Monday, you're talking to the guys who founded Wired magazine. And so we were literally thrown in at the deep end.
Straight in the deep end.
Yeah.
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 But it's really nice because it was sort of, it went from talking to, you know, like legends in surfing and surf culture right through to talking to like the guy who founded Atari, the guys who founded, like you said, Wired magazine, Twitch, which is a massive gaming platform, all kinds of different people. Oh, the artist.
Robert Williams.
Yeah. And that's lovely being able to operate both within surf culture, but also within the sort of the realms of like youth culture and technology and emerging technologies.
Yeah. And tell us also about the Jack O'Neill project.
Yeah, the Jack O'Neill, that was quite amazing in that, obviously when Jack passed away, O'Neill wanted to do a tribute film to Jack, but they also wanted it turning around in time for the paddle out. So I think we basically had something like a 5-day turnaround for the script. And one of the things about Jack is, for someone who was such a surfing legend, he didn't do any interviews. You know, he was quite a private person. So, you know, talking to the O'Neill people, they set us up talking with Jack's close personal friends at a time when Jack had just passed away. And so we got to talk to the people about Jack and about the person behind the legend and, you know, his life and his loves and, you know, that like what inspired him. And so that was what we wanted the film to be, quite a personal thing about Jack himself.
Something that both his friends would recognise, but also those people who knew him as the founder of a major sort of surf movement and company would also recognise. So it's like tipping that fine line between intimacy and, you know, business, and making sure that you are mentioning someone's highlights from their career.
And at such a sensitive time period as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, when the people closest to him would, will be at their most sensitive.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very moving experience because we were talking to people and they would be in tears remembering things that Jack had done and moments, which is hard. Like, as a writer, those are the things you need. You need those special moments, but also trying to tease those moments out, you have to be very sensitive and tread carefully.
Yeah. And let's to finish this episode off then, we've been asking our followers and friends throughout the last week to say their favourite surf films and why. And we've had lots of mentions of North Shore and lots of people sharing lines from North Shore and testing each other as to who knows the script best. What about, and other movies as well, what about you guys then? Festival or not, favourite surf movies of all time, what would they be?
Go on, Dem, you can go first.
All right, so I'm going to think within the festival timeline. Because there are so many surf movies, and I think for me, I find it very hard because it's always dependent on my mood. You know?
Right.
Like, are you feeling Morning of the Earth? Are you feeling Litmus? Are you feeling North Shore? So, I'm going to say two of my standout films, because I can't even limit that to one. I'd say Stoked and Broke. Just great concept, great filmmakers. It's funny, it's moving, it's got all of the surfcraft in it. That to me is just such a wonderful film. And Come Hell or High Water, When anyone ever says to me, what's the perfect length for a surf movie, I always come back to Come Hell or High Water, because I look at the fact that Keith Malloy managed to sum up a surfing subculture in its entirety, the body surfing world, in 45 minutes. So eloquently, so beautifully, great cinematography. So those are two of my favourites. I could go on and on and on. I'll stop there.
I'd go to Litmus, because that was a film that had a huge impact on me. Because for me, it was like the first time you'd seen surfing that wasn't all, blue seas, board shorts, palm trees. The fact that they were in Ireland and surfing like grey seas and seeing it on I think I wore out my VHS.
That Joel Fitzgerald section at Pampers.
And
get nightmares off it still.
Tom Curran, and also as well, that was the other thing that they did, which was they brought in the older generation of surfers who were no longer surfing in the contest, but they still were like, these people are still relevant. They're still affecting surf culture. And
there's a wave of Mickey Dora in
Yes.
Litmus going down the line at J Bay, and it can't have been much more than a year before he passed away. And as he goes down, they're talking about whoever it is narrating, talking about the joy that Mickey Dora had in wave riding. Very memorable.
Derek Hind.
It's Derek Hind,
riding all kinds of weird, what we thought were weird boards back then. He was on a
but
fish.
now they're not.
It basically was a pioneering film in so many ways. And we did a screening, didn't we, at on the big screen at the Riverside. And I remember saying, because it brought back so many memories, and I remember if you went to someone's house who was a surfer and you saw the orange cover of Litmus on their bookshelf, you immediately knew what sort of person they were. It was like ticking a box and going, you get it.
Absolutely. And were you going to name another one then?
You've got to go back to like Free Ride, I think, for me. Just
right.
Again, just such an iconic film. Great soundtrack, great surfing. Just iconic moments from surfing in that film that you can just tick off. The Mark Richards and Sean Thompson double barrel ride. Where Sean Thompson's deeper in the barrel than Mark Richards. And we were chatting to Sean Thompson about
in giant backdoor as well.
And Sean Thompson said that wave changed his life because he was deeper than Mark Richards, and Mark Richards was on a twin fin. And Sean said that he was on a single fin, and he went, that's why single fins are better than twin fins. And so he didn't make the transition to twin fins, and Mark Richards did. And Mark Richards went on to win 4 world titles in a row.
So that was a huge moment in surf history then. I did not realise the effect of that, the butterfly effect of that moment.
Yeah.
Incredible. For me, I like the... have you guys ever met Jack McCoy?
Yes. Yeah, we met
You
him
have?
actually in San Sebastian at Sancho's Festival.
Yeah, very tall.
Is he?
Yes.
He was 100% like Mr. Aloha, wasn't he?
He was. Very mellow, like, when you look at his films, these Billabong films, you expect him to be really high energy, but he was quite a chilled cat, wasn't he?
He was so chilled, yeah.
I like the... we're talking about moments in surf history. I reckon the Billabong Challenge movies that he made. Now I know that Sick Joy is probably his best cinematography, or the Documentary is a brilliant documentary or whatever. But the Billabong challenges, besides bringing Oki off the couch and then giving us the 1999 world champ, I think probably made the Dream Tour happen, didn't they? Because it was about this idea of like let's make a surf movie with the kind of trippy Jack McCoy sentimentality, but we'll structure it around a contest, and we'll have vests and jerseys and all of that, and so Psychedelic Desert Groove, Billabong Challenge, Billabong Challenge 2 at J Bay, and then the junior ones that they made, Wide Open and I forget the name of the other one. Those would be it for me. And then what about what's out at the moment? I've loved now that we've got such good cameras available to so many people, some of the documentaries out there, the Laura Eniver one, Undone, absolutely blew my mind. That is, everyone has to watch that in 2020. Have you got any recommendations at the moment?
I would so firmly second that. I watched Undone, and it absolutely blew me away. It's that thing where she's everything you think she is and more. She's so unassuming. Yeah. She's so small and fun and free, and the waves she surfs really are not. They are so heavy. And you know what? It made me go, when I paddle out, I need to be more Laura Eniver. And the other film where I went, I need to be more like that, was Pentecostal. I don't know if you've seen that.
Right, yeah.
I think that's available. I think you can watch it on YouTube, actually. But
yeah, it's on YouTube, yeah.
Honestly, some of that cinematography is absolutely stunning. You know, we were saying about those camera angles that Kai Neville has, where you're missing the bottom of the wave and it's all about the action above the lip. It kind of plays with that notion again. And the music is so good. It's just so much guitar in it. I felt so amped up that every time I paddle out now, I'm going, Pentecostal. Yeah, it's so good, and the animation in the opening.
Well, that's all Crest listeners' homework for this week then. Yeah,
the animation in those opening credits as well, beautiful, just incredible, just mind blowing.
I'd second that.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for the recommendations, guys. And thanks for coming. It's been an absolute blast talking to the pair of you. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll be sharing any information as soon as we get it about what's going to be happening with your next festival plans, and let's hope that we get everything up and running as fully as we possibly can as soon as possible. Just thanks so much for doing what you're doing, and thanks for your time.
Oh, do you know what? This has been so fun.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
It's so nice, like catching up with friends and getting to talk about all the things that we love.
Yeah, we could go for another hour.
Yeah.
We could, but Apple podcast statistics tell us that we're not supposed to.
Oh, don't get into algorithms.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah. Goodness me. The year of algorithms, 2020. Thank you very much, guys.
So, as mentioned at the start, there will be an extra Crest this week, as we align our release date with Thursdays for our final 3 episodes. If you've enjoyed this episode and haven't done so yet, then do subscribe to us via either of the big 4, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify or Google Podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram and send us any feedback via castcrest@gmail.com. And keep an eye out for that survey next month. What's left in terms of shows for Season 1? Well, our 2020 finale will be a special double episode, Part 1 coming out on October the 1st and Part 2 a week later. Who could possibly merit 2 shows in such a manner? It will be worth the wait, I can assure you. In the meantime, you only need to wait 3 days now to hear my discussion with the Irish slab charger and extreme traveller Owen McCarthy Deering. It'll be sitting on your platform of choice this Thursday morning. Enjoy, moin hewch. Thanks for listening to this one, diolch am gwrando, and see you then. Gwelech chi bore iau, pawb.
Hi all, it's producer Dodd here again. Thanks to Chris and Demi there, I found that one really interesting. Just a quick update to say that the London Surf Film Festival, which was originally scheduled for this autumn, has actually been postponed due to the ongoing COVID pandemic. It's not all bad news though, as it's not cancelled, and all being well, we can look forward to it in the spring.